This is Basic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
I get my first royalties check. I'll never forget, $35,000. I go down to Wells Fargo and they wouldn't cash the darn thing.
This is an interview episode of Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Jerry Falkenhan had 3 programs published by Atari Program Exchange: Family Cash Flow, Family Budget, and Family Vehicle Expense. Atari bought Family Cash Flow and Family Budget and packaged them as an Atari-branded product called Family Finances. This interview took place on January 26, 2016.
Some of the stuff I happen to think about, I also have the Atari Stars for the first place winnings.
I need to see those.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's in the garage that I've got unpacked. So what I would like to do is, as we go through, and I talk about these things, I'll make a note of what I have to find, because I do have them. The Atari Stars, I've got 2 firsts, a second, and a third.
Wow.
Family Finances was made up of Family Cash Flow and Family Budget. The budget was read from the cash flow data disc, and each one of those in APEX won first prize in that category for 2 consecutive quarters. One first quarter for one of them, second for next quarter for the budget, and then the family vehicle expenses, I believe, got second, and I had one other that got a third place. I forget what that is.
So tell me, I want to hear, at the very beginning, tell me how you got interested in computers, how the first time you saw an Atari, and why you decided to get one, and tell me the very beginning of the story. Okay,
the beginning is based on the requirement of the president of a place called Micropower Systems up in Santa Clara, California. I had been running the facility in Tijuana, Mexico, and he asked that I come to Santa Clara to take over the manufacturing up there. And hedge and hum, fairly expensive in Silicon Valley at that time compared to San Diego in terms of cost of housing and so forth. So after hemming and hawing and a few other things, we got the finances settled as to what would allow me to move. Selling the house, buying a house up there. I ultimately bought in the what's called the Almaden Valley, which is South San Jose, up against the mountains.
You were moving from where?
From San Diego.
Okay.
And up to Silicon Valley. In this case, San Jose, California, right in the bottom of Silicon Valley. And bottom line is, when I got up there, my finances were so close. At that time, I was a single earner for the household. There was a time when wives didn't have to work. There was one of those. And so anyhow, I reasoned that, gee, I need to know exactly where I am in finances. Well, doing pencil and paper is doable, but it's aggravating, and all the other things go with that. And at that time, it came to mind, well, the computer can do those kinds of things. It can remember, and it can do calculations and things like that. So I said, okay, cast about for what kind of a computer. Well, it turned out one of our marketing fellows for Micropower Systems had a buddy over at Atari, and he was able to buy the Atari computer, the 800, with a tape drive and a 40-column printer for what the employee would buy it for. So I jumped on that. Now, if I remember correctly, something like $800 or $1,000, something fairly expensive, but it was going to allow me to track my finances. Well, lo and behold, the first thing, tape is not a good way to do things. Okay, it didn't take too very long to realize first thing I got to figure out how to make this thing run besides do what I think it was called Star Wars or something like that, a thing where you could fly rockets around and things like it. It was
Star Eaters or something?
Yes, with that guy. And 2 things had to occur. One was get knowledgeable about this box that I bought. 2, find some better way to have my stuff saved, that kind of thing. Well, there was an Atari users group. I forget how I stumbled into that to meet these fellows, but I happened to know one of the founders of the user group, and he became my mentor along the way. gentleman by the name of John Crane, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him later, because I think you'd like to talk to him, because I talked to him about you guys on Monday, and he's thrilled to pieces to want to be a part of all this.
Oh, excellent. I'd like to talk to him.
Yeah, his knowledge is much greater depth than mine is, but I'll give you my story. Bottom line is, I get in the Atari users group, and I'm sitting back in there just trying to absorb this stuff, because I had the only computer experience I'd ever had was an IBM 360 using it, and I actually programmed it once, and it was being used for testing semiconductors. So I wrote a program for doing that kind of thing. But beyond that, it came out that there was a disk drive for this thing, single-sided, single floppy, 160K hard drive, disk drive rather. I said, oh, whoopee, now I got something I can save it on, that kind of thing. Also, I discovered there was an Atari module. They called it ATASCII Basic in a module. They had, the modules of RAM, 16K modules of RAM, and they also had this ATASCII Basic in a module.
You mean the Atari Basic cartridge?
Yes.
Okay.
They call it Atari Basic. It was ATASCII Basic.
ATASCII. I'm not going to argue with you, but no.
Yeah. It was a really heavy duty. You only had 128 variables, and if you wanted any more than that, you had to unload, and reload, and that kind of thing. So I did. I learned a whole lot in a very short period of time out of desperation for needing this information. Well, in the library of the Atari users group, they had bits and pieces of coding. Okay. And I had taken a course at Stanford on the Atari Basic. In Basic, you taught, for example, a for next loop and this kind of thing. We're talking extremely basic stuff. And I got real tired when I got home of typing one in, watch it run, and shut the thing down. It was gone. So, and then the user group happened to befriend John Crane, and he led me to the library and said, look, here's some pieces in here. You might know how to save a file, how to do various items. So I took pieces of that and constructed, with his looking over my shoulder kind of a thing, built the family cash flow. And then I had a place I could save the information and run the program and stick a disk in and save the data and all that kind of stuff. It was pretty slick. Well, Atari came out to all the users group and said, anybody's got anything written for the Atari computer, send it to us along with documentation, and we'll evaluate it. So I don't know nothing. So I sent my stuff in hoping these guys would look at it and say, okay, this is wrong, that's wrong, and so forth. What I got back was one day I was in Mexico in the factory, and I get a call from my buddy. He had been at the user group meeting, and Atari representative had come in and announced the fact that I had won first place in their contest on the first quarter for the I think it was the home user stuff or something like they called it, that particular grouping. And it blew me away. Oh yeah, I'm first place. Oh wow, what I win? $1,000 of Atari stuff, whatever I wanted, at retail, of course. Right. But that was the family cash flow, and I had set it up where there are 5 income categories and 8 expense categories. That's about as much as I could get on the screen and be decent. And you did the basic kinds of things. You create a database. You could add to it, subtract from it, print it, look at it, those kinds of things.
So when a couple questions. First of all, it seems like Atari went to your user group meeting to try to tell you in person that you had won, but you weren't there at that particular meeting.
I wasn't for that meeting. My buddy John Crane called me. I was in the factory in Mexico, and he called and said, guess what? What? We said, what's wrong? They say my stuff is crap. He says, no, you won first prize. I was astounded. I had no idea, what I was doing. I was doing with, knowing I had a vision, and I made the vision work, and it was working. I had at that time an 80-year-old mother-in-law running the software and actually using it. So I made it that simple that it could be understood by just anybody.
Did you even know they had accepted it at that point? I mean, they hadn't even given you any feedback at all until they showed up.
Not at that point. They just simply, they made the announcement at the. I talk about being on cloud 9. I mean, gee whiz, this was wonderful.
So what'd you do? Do you pick out a bunch of new hardware and?
Well, of course. And I went through the catalog, like I got a second hard drive or floppy drive, and I got all the software and for the computer, and more RAM, of course. The wish list is always the same: more RAM, that kind of thing. Once I exhausted that, I had put in to the Atari Exchange at that point the budget program, which read the database created by the cash flow program. I had advised the users, hey, what you do is you get 3 months worth of data, and now you can go ahead and get a budget and see trends in your stuff by looking at this thing. And the only limitation on the thing was it was a penny shy of $1 million, because that's all that would sit on a TV screen. That's all we had for monitors back then. You have income and expense, and then the difference. And so, a TV is not a very good 8-inch column printer. I mean, it doesn't present very well beyond that. So that was a limitation that I heard about from one of the South American users of that software. Because of the rate of exchange, he was only able to put $100,000 in, a penny short of $100,000 because of the rate of exchange. So, it's nothing I could do about it at that point. But budget program, same thing. It was announced that that had won first prize in that category. Again, here now I've got all this stuff, this hardware. I got trackball, which I didn't like. I got joysticks. I got everything imaginable. So I happened to. There was a guy who was in the user group. It was up in Union City, I believe it was, between Silicon Valley and San Francisco, and he had a furniture store, utilities, washers, dryers, and all. And he desperately wanted to get his hands on some hard drives and stuff. So he gave me a menu list of what he wanted, and so I got him from Atari as my prizes. Took him up to him, and I got a DVD player, a tape driver, right? What do you call it? The video VCR.
There VCR. So you traded some of the hard
floppy
drives and stuff for VCR.
And a new TV, so, but the VCR must have weighed 300 tons. It was one of the first ones out. But I got that and saw the Lord of the Rings. It was the very first thing I ever saw, and because of that monies I had won. Well, my first royalties check came in. I think it was like from the Atari from the Apex was like $15-20. I said, oh, that's nice. Next quarter was something like 150, and the third quarter was went up to 150, and something like $1,600. I said, this is getting very. Don't anything to give me money. It's a pretty good deal,
nice.
And hardware. But I get a call from a consultant to Atari on software, and the guy by the name of John Seller. And John called me and says, hey, I'd like to talk to you about your software. Atari would like to take it mainline. I said, oh? He says, yeah, they're offering $8,000 for you to make it toot the whistles and make the bells go off and the colors and fine. I said, only one proviso. You don't change the structure. I got an 80-year-old grandmother that's over here running this stuff, and she don't know her butt from a hole in the ground, and she's running this stuff and doing a wonderful job. It's for what we call user-friendly software. So anyhow, it does the job and it's easy to use. So bottom line is I go into Atari, and they want this thing to go mainline. And
so this was kind of taking family cash flow and family budget and turning it into
correct,
not an APX program but an official Atari release.
Right. They say they want to write on top of my copyright for the thing. And in fact, on my disc it says Atari, copyright Atari, and below is Jerry Falkenhan. So I'm immortalized in that fashion.
Nice. And family vehicle expense didn't exist yet at this point, right?
No, it was I was casting about at that point in time. Well, hey, this is a neat way to make dough, and I can give you the whole story, make it better.
Okay. Yeah.
But going on, I get this, and then finally we go through I think it was like an 8-week cycle. I mean, they wore this software out.
Yeah. What do they want changed? I mean, what do they want? Give me some examples.
Well, they had I had little bugs and I didn't know existed. They took it to its maximum in its maximums of it in each category and this kind of thing, and dividing by zero and see if it divided by zero and failed. All these kinds of things. And on one occasion, after I brought in, I think about the fifth iteration, they said, "This is we saw this wrong." I stuck it in. I said, "Well, let me show you in just a minute." And I hit the control escape key, I believe it was. That dropped you out of the program, and you could see the code. And the guys, they almost had a heart attack when they did that. They said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Well, that's how it's going to work on it." I said, "Well, look, I'll tell you what you do. We're going to give you to our top programmer. He's going to give you some machine code. That you load that first, and you can't do that anymore. Nobody can get it." So, okay, that's going to make it a little harder to
keep people from breaking out of your program to look at the listing.
Yeah, they were very, very anal about that. They weren't going to allow that to occur. I was more than willing to share the code. No, no code sharing. Bottom line is, I wish I could remember the guy's name. Little quiet guy, and he had developed that war game of some sort where it was a map with all kinds of your strategy.
You're talking about Chris Crawford, and his game was Eastern Front 1941.
Yeah, it was about as dry as a watching grass grow or something. I mean, I play with it 4 minutes. Hey, this is not my thing. But yeah, Chris was very, very kind, gentle with me because if you're going to talk about popping and pushing and all the other good stuff you have to do on these things, and I learned just a teeny bit of machine language, just enough to understand what it was doing and when to apply it and so forth. So that took care of that problem. Finally, they finally said, "Okay, we've got a finished product. It's good. We're going to take it to market." And so I didn't know in what fashion what it was going to look like or anything else until I saw the boxes, but in the catalog. So wow, gee whiz! I mean, and they had this was one flavor. The other flavor was where they added some other things into the box and became a household software kind of a thing. I think it was like a cookbook or something like that, or a database thing. There was some other goodies they had put in it. So it had two flavors selling. And so the thing is, I'm bopping along, happy, and have a pig and a poke, and I get my first royalties check. I'll never forget, $35,000, and I go down. I go down to Wells Fargo and they wouldn't cash the darn thing. I'd like to have we're going to keep it a week before we cash it. I said, it's Atari right down the street here, for crying out loud. I swear to bullets till the darn thing cleared. I didn't know anything about what was going on. And so the first one, and then this second one comes along. And it was, I think, $55,000 in the second quarter it was out. Ultimately, over a course of about a year and a half, it was like a $1.2 million, $1 million product, of which they gave me 10% of the retail.
Wow!
So I made over $100,000, and it was difficult not to trying to hide from the tax guy, but it was a tough thing to do. But Chris Crawford helped me, and there was a woman. I wish I could remember. Not Marge. She was my manager, I guess you would call her, in that I was being considered as a contract printer, programmer. And Marge, I'll have to pull it out. Maybe John will remember, but Margaret something. I don't remember the something just yet. This is like 79, 80 time frame. Thereabouts, and she was the force behind making it happen. Previous to that, it was another guy. I don't remember his name. I can see him with his square glasses and his suit and everything else. Very frail kind of a guy, but he was handling it for a while. Then Margaret took over and handled it. The guy who did it was the QA manager, was a guy named Colin Jury. I'll never forget this guy. He was a terror. I mean, he kept my nose to the grindstone until they got it worked all the time. Every time he and his people couldn't break it. He had a staff of like 3 or 4 people constantly doing all kinds of things to this thing to see what they can do to it. But that's the essence of what had occurred.
Wow.
But it became beyond that, I was given things to use, like the printer. Okay, so that I could make sure that it worked on the printer, was it did all the reports and all this stuff. And well, I'd given some other, I don't remember off the top of my head. Some stuff I was given, some stuff I won. Bottom line is I had about everything that they had. I tried the word processor, but it was a 40-column thing that was really supposed to be 80-column. On a TV screen, you got to see 40, you had to switch. It was a mess. But then he came to me after this thing had been out for a while, after I had left my micropower systems, to found a software company with 4 other guys to do financial software on the IBM PC-1. And you wouldn't believe what we got out of a single-sided, single-density hard drive, or floppy drive, rather. And but it turned out to be, the thing was like 5 or 6 discs thick, that kind of thing. It was quite a program. It would create its own. In fact, what's the one in the green box that everybody buys nowadays? Is financial software program. Whatever that is was a. Their structure looked real familiar, because doing it, they did it in Windows, and it's as opposed to compiled BASIC. But during that time, the guy that ran Commodore bought Atari, and he came to, I wish I remember his name.
Jack Trammell.
Yeah, what a piece of work he was. Apparently walked into Atari, and the guys were telling me about this while it was happening. And told me he walked in, and I think out of 10 phones in an area, he'd take out 9 of them, and this kind of thing. And my understanding is, and this is hearsay, he got the place for 10 cents on the dollar, is what I understand, something like that. And along the way, it's about the same time when they buried a whole bunch of cartridges they went looking for a couple of months ago on TV. I'd seen it. That was the time they did that burial stuff. But he tried to clean it up and make something out of it. And I was approached by his folks because they had an 80-column printer that they had done. And they came to me and wanted me to make my software talk to that printer. I said, okay, just why don't you give me the printer and the codes I need, control codes, so I can get, I'll patch that into it, and away we go. He said, no, we'll give you the printer at retail. And wait a minute. I'm doing this for nothing until it's done, and you pay me. What the heck is wrong with that? Yeah. Previous to that, I'm going to say they hand me all the hardware I need to get the work done. And, I offered it back. No, you go ahead and keep it, that kind of stuff. Whatever it was that I needed to get done. I had like the Atari, all the codes for the Atari, the internals of the thing, and they were published. There was nothing particularly hidden about that. But I had a book full of that stuff, and I had other things they had given me to help me improve on everything. And then they also made me a beta test site on a lot of stuff. They were sending me stuff, saying, here, try this out. And it would end up in a cartridge, rather. Mm-hmm. And I played the darn thing for a little while. So, this is what I say, and then give them that input. And I tried some of the other software they would send me and say, what do you think of this kind of thing? So it was a beta test site for some of their stuff before the guy bought the place.
Before Jack Trammell came in. Yeah.
Yes. When he did that with he and his folks, I said, well, wait a second, I'll be happy to do it. Give me what I want, and I'll give it back to you when I'm done. And mealy mouth, and I finally said, look, forget it. By this time, I'm already back working in the world of high-tech stuff. I'm a director of manufacturing at a $35 million company at that point in Salem Semi-House. And no, I think we're going to pass on this one. You're going to find somebody else to do it for you. I said, it's not that hard. I'd be happy to do it, and wouldn't beat you out of your trying to even give it back to you. And no. Okay, I'm done. That was the end of that story. Wow. So over time, they still got more royalties checked. In fact, I came across a couple when I was looking for these letters I told you about from the users, and found that like 6 months after he took over, I was still getting royalties checked to the point where I think that overall I got about 120 to 150,000. I don't remember the total number, but it was So I was just a happy camper at that
So
point.
were you still working your regular job at this time? Was this supplemental income? It's not like you quit your job for this.
Well, I should send you the pictures of me in the daytime being a manufacturing director of manufacturing. The nighttime, I'd put my cape on and become super programmer.
Nice.
But when I made the transition from into the software company we founded, then I was part time with the solid state semiconductor company, and then I went to Zero and devoted full time to the other guy because I was sitting on my royalties, so I didn't need any money particularly to live and to pay the mortgage and all the other stuff. And I was being paid in founder stock. Okay, this is typical Silicon Valley kinds of thing. Investing my time and efforts and taking pay in founder stock, looking for it to go to marketplace at some point in time, and then converting that into real money. I can tell you a story about it. I think I did share a story about Apple being in their conference room in Cupertino and wanting to port the financial software onto their platform, and they wouldn't give us bit for nothing. It made me so mad. They wouldn't tell us anything about how it worked or anything else.
This is for the Macintosh, I assume.
Right back then. And this is where we were working on doing the IBM PC and wanted to port it over to their system. It made me so mad that they treated us they were so secret, I guess really is what's going on at the time, that I refused to even bother with them. And I wish I had taken some of those royalties back then and dumped about 10 grand on them. And I think I would be, as I told you before, I'd be sitting in Acapulco sipping a mint julep or something.
Right.
Instead of being a working stiff. But it was a wild and woolly time. Oh, I have this shirt that they got. I think I told you, three-quarter sleeve shirt, the Atari they gave me. When it went mainline and all that stuff. I mean, these guys buttered me up left and right, and went down to CES that year.
Yeah, tell me about that. You told me you went down to one of the shows. They had you go down there as a contract programmer. What'd they have you do, and who'd you see? And tell me about it.
Well, I went down as informed I was going to be there, and they said, "Sure, stop by. If you're there, and so forth." I knew some of the folks who were there, the marketing guys primarily, or people. But like I got to see Minnesota Fats shoot pool. I got to shake hands with Debbie Reynolds. Things like that went on. In the show itself, I spent a little bit of time with the Atari folks because as part of them was wearing my shirt and everything. But they also had that, I guess it was the Atom computer or whatever it was at the time, this little box that was supposed to be so wonderful and not cost very much, and he kept giving blue screens at the show. So sorry for those folks. But that was my experiences here. A lot of stuff. I got more and more things to see from the CES, and it was in Las Vegas, and I actually came away with more money than when I went, so that wasn't too bad a deal. Also, there wasn't very much. They didn't stand me up on stage and have me talking about the product. They had marketing folks who were doing that, and they wouldn't use what I thought was the best catchphrase for what I had done. I said, "Now I know this is going over the world. I took the lady of the night and turned her into a lady. Is what I did." Not made it from a game player into an actual working product that somebody could really do things with.
Right.
The husband could go off and he could play his games, and then he could play with the finances or work with the finances of the household, those kinds of things. It really put it to work is what he did. I was among many, let me put it that way. But that was my intention for myself, and it translated nicely into the marketplace.
So we talked about family cash flow and family budget, but we kind of glossed over family vehicle expense. When did that came in? Did they ask you to do it, or was that your idea? Was this something you needed because you had a car, or did they just ask you to do it to fill in?
The best software is where you have a need. Okay, I've become bilingual. For example, I work in Mexico, so I have a need. I'm bilingual. Yo soy, puedo hablar bien español. But I had a need to know how much it cost me to use my vehicle. Well, if you really delve into it, for reimbursement purposes on a business trip that you do in a car, at that time, 25 cents a mile just flat didn't do it. Okay. Now I wanted to find out what it really cost. And when I really delved into it, you were dealing with depreciation. We're dealing with cost of gas, repairs, maintenance, all those kinds of things. When combined, you take that pile in a given period of time and divide it by the miles driven, you suddenly just find out, that time at a quarter, I think it was something like $1.50 or $1.25 a mile is more correct at that time. So that means even more so in today's marketplace, if I choose the right one as an app for an iPhone, I think you're going to find it probably it's like $2-3. Rather, I think it's like 50 or 75 cents a mile, something like that's allowed. So I had a need, is what it turned out to be, and I translated that need into something I was sure somebody else might need. Okay, and what it is, I created something. I think it tracks 5 vehicles. As I remember, I got to look at my own documentation, and it uses depreciation rates and all this. Look at the blue book, so you can get what you bought it for, and what's blue book says right now. And or there are other things they were looking for get you do your homework first. And there's an algorithm which shows the tremendous depreciation rate in the first year versus the future years. And so I plugged all that stuff in. I made it into a subroutine, a function, so that you wash this information through that to get depreciation and capture the fuel, capture all the maintenance costs, all those kinds of things. It would spit out, okay, here's what it costs you per mile per vehicle. So I had a need for it myself, and I shared that need. And I put it in a fashion I thought was as simple as I could make it. Again, like the family cash flow and the budget and cash flow, make it simple and in English. This is when, for example, the money care program we created on the IBM PC-1, I did the whole menu structure on that thing, and it handled stocks and bonds and all kinds of stuff. And I refuse to use big, long words and things to confuse people. And say, look, this is money. This is in various forms, okay. And this is how made it so it was user friendly. The interface is very critical in this software. Have you ever worked with Photoshop?
No, I can't. I don't understand it.
Microsoft had a thing called Digital Pro 10, and it's very intuitive. Okay, I went to transfer to Photoshop. I turned it on and couldn't figure a darn thing out. Much like yourself, I actually had to take a semester course at Southwestern College over here, junior college. So okay, this is how you turn on. This is what all these pieces are, and this is how they go together. Once I got the hang of it, I'm doing all kinds of great stuff with it. But that means you got to really invest a lot of time. This is what killed the home user computers back in 1979, 1980. When they plugged them in, it wasn't a toaster. You couldn't use it. You had to know DOS if you were dealing with the IBM or IBM clones. So you could even work the thing, for crying out loud. You had to depend on a programmer to translate what you need in a way that you could use the darn thing. It wasn't so. Bottom line is the world of software and computers fell apart. This is the time when I was doing that stuff, 1980, 81, and that thing went off with these guys. So I went back in the world of semiconductor stuff. I'll come back again when the interface is a lot better. But bottom line is, you make the stuff so it's usable, okay, and useful. I was doing stuff that I wanted and I needed. If I want it and I need it, I'm thinking folks, there are probably the folks out there who would want it. I think that one won second prize. The the cash flow on the budget, that one, there were first prizes. This thing won the second prize.
Yeah, so you did 3 programs, and all 3 of them won Atari Star Awards.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Awesome.
It was a desperate need, and I translated that need into something that was usable by most, if not a lot. And Atari agreed with it. In fact, the funny thing was that one of the things that drove my software to be taken mainline was that Atari did their internal programmers had written a financial package. Okay, they took it out to the marketplace, and it was terrible. It lost data. It did all kinds of horrible things, hardly understandable. The exact opposite of what I had done. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but I had done it because I needed it so it was easy to use, and it didn't lose anything. That was a really important thing to me. So that was one of the reasons I understand it from John Sutler why mine was picked up. Theirs was thrown in the trash, and mine was the one that was out there. So that was the motivating or driving cause behind it. But and John Crane, just to highlight John, he's a wonderful person, shares everything, and he guided me. Okay, it was really a wonderful experience to be around him and have him. Well, you might want to do this. To code it this way. You got to do that kind of thing. It really was a tremendous help. And that user group, that was all kinds of information flowing back and forth. It's much like what you're doing right here, sharing of knowledge. And this is what we were doing. We're sharing of knowledge in those things. And everybody, here's look at the code here, you can have that. It all over the place.
And your friend John, I believe, also wrote an APX program too. He did the RPN calculator simulator.
Mm-hmm. And that was his. And it was funny when he called me. I think he did that. And he did one that wasn't picked up about a resistor or something. I don't remember. His one, mine was picked up. And then it turns out I won first prize. I called John and said, first thing I said, John, I apologize. I'm sorry. He says, look, to him as a teacher, it's the biggest piece of pride he could possibly have to have his pupil do better than him. I thought that was a wonderful, and I used that same philosophy over the years. I think he was very positive power in my life, I guess is the best way to say it. Give me some pointers, and didn't learn how not to be selfish, how would you put it, pat people in the back when they're doing better than you are. You got them on the right path. But that's a John Crane. He had the RPN calculator was one he did, and I didn't ever have use for it. The way the things I do, were doing at the time, I was modeling. It's another story. For the Atari, they had this. What was it? Something before. Excel and that kind of. There was a math manipulator, I guess. If you wanted to do math, you did it this way, this way, this way, this way, in the model. You couldn't.
Like the VisiCalc spreadsheet.
That's it. Yeah, it was the first cut anybody had done. But I used that thing to. I had a presentation I'd do for the Japanese, and we were very tight with those guys in the semi world. And the costing of this thing, and I had done it, and he handed it to him, and it blew him away. I'd never seen this done before this way, So, what John had done was, it's a very nice thing, but I didn't have a use for it in my world. I'm sure people did need it. That's the good part. I'm not even sure how well that done. Do you have any information on that, or you can ask John, or I could ask him, how to do.
Oh, how his RPN program did? I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is not very well, but that's just a guess.
Yeah, I say I don't need it. I didn't track it.
It has a lot less broad need than than family cash flow or something like that.
Yeah, mine was a very broad marketplace, and anybody played a game and wanted to. Give the wife a reason for having an Atari computer. So, well, look, I can take care of the finances here. Look.
The finances would be better if you stopped buying computer equipment.
Yeah. Well, you look okay now. You don't have to do all that makeup. We're down that road, it doesn't work well.
Oh, you're going to get us both in trouble, Jerry.
Oh, yeah. Been there, done that. But I'm now 71, so I get to say some of the stuff without getting beat up. I did all this, I think it was like 35 or 40 back then when all this happened. So it was a wild and woolly time. Some other things that are surfing, I just can't put my arms around it right now. But John was one of the founders of the South Bay Atari Users Group, and since they were local to Atari, it was a very close marriage, and a lot of the inside information was coming back and forth. John, when you talk to him, I think it give you much more a broader scope of stuff, because I came along fat, dumb, and happy, didn't know what I was doing, needing help, and Helping Hand came down and walked me down the path. John used me as what he called he was teaching HP trainer on their systems, the big mini computers and all that, and he was using me as a example of a paradigm, and then I took two just different things, put them together and made something new out of it and usable. And this is what, so I think you feel good. It's kind of nice to have that happen. But again, I recommend talking to John. He's got plenty of stories, probably much better than mine.
That'd be hard to beat, but yeah, I'll definitely talk to him. So do you still have an Atari machine?
John called me about 2-3 years ago. I mean, it was further back. He says, Jerry, you still got your 800? Yeah. He says, you think you might give it to my son wants to use one and see what it was like, and would you mind it? No, I think that probably it's a nice time for me to release that. How much you want for it? No, I just give it to you. With what he had done for me, I could never repay him. I said, no, just your son, enjoy. So I was going to ask him about that on Sunday to find out if he still had it. His son did. It may still exist. I don't know. But software, I mean, it's out there. The original code. I've got some floppies. I think of threw away. The old original stuff. I got the ones in the box version, but you can't get into them to see the code. But it's not that hard.
Right.
And yeah. I think I had somebody a couple of years ago ask me, could they publish the source code? Because of the APX stuff, you could see the code. Yeah, by all means. This is what makes this better, by sharing. You teach me, and maybe I'll pick up something, you can pick something up out of it, and so forth, and go for it. So that's why we're talking now. How can I share? How can I help? If anybody's listening to this thing that's never done this, go for it. I strongly recommend it. If you can't, I'm so proud of the fact I did what I did. I didn't shy away from it. I took a giant leap off a cliff and had a parachute work. Okay, it didn't crash on the rocks. I actually quit one company I was getting high up in, say the least, in Silicon Valley, and jumped into this stuff and up to my eyeballs and had a ride that was unbelievable. I was at 15 minutes in the sun that Andy Warhol used to talk about.
Right.
And I think I told you a story about being here in San Diego, and my buddy down here took me into a software store, computer store. At that time, they were very small. And walking in there, there's my software for sale, and some guy wanting to buy it. And my buddy speaks up, hey, here's the author. And the guy had me sign the box, for crying out loud. Yeah, so
nice.
That's 15 minutes in the sun, but go for it. I mean, it's out there. Give it a shot. You don't ever want to regret something. Take it, be in the bucket list, put it on the honey-do list, do it, and if you crash, oh well, learn from it.
Sure.
So.
That's good advice. I think you sort of answered this question already with what you just said, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you could send a message to the people who are still using Atari computers today, and you can because they're listening to this interview, what would you tell them?
You got a nice, strong little box that does some really nice stuff. It'll play games, and it'll also do real computer kinds of things. What I mean by that is it'll allow you to control data, manipulate, capture data, manipulate it, and save it for future use. That's That's the other thing it'll do. You can create things with it. go out. I actually wrote a little visual program where I had a guy with a bat hit a ball and hit the wall, and that was the end of the program. But yeah, but it allows you to get your hands into the thing. If you want to learn how to program, it's very simple, very easy software to work with, the basic and so forth, and give it a shot. It's a starting point. I enjoyed it when I did it, and anybody wants to go for it, it's a stepping stone. What can I tell you? Because they've come a long way since then.
Yeah.
Actually, we used to pray to be able to see color on a monitor screen. They were only green and black or orange and black. Okay, that was it. Same thing with, oh man, I'd love to be able to get 80 columns on a screen. You can't do that on a TV screen. Okay, but you can on one of these. All those things have happened, and there's no stopping. I see all this iPad and the iPod and all those apps and everything. Go for it. As a Atari user, yeah, it's a fun little game thing and enjoyable. It's one thing. It's like they had shoot 'em ups with shooting a guy with a square ball. Okay, isn't the same thing as other things. They're pretty brutal things out there. I think having your kids play with this is a gentle way to go. I guess is a way of saying it.
Nice. Did you do any software that wasn't published?
There were some things I started to tackle, but then after founding this software company with the other guys, that was a full-year cycle. I mean, we had $1 million, part of it from Charles Schwab, another part from the Stanford group on Page Mill Road, their investor, and we also had Bank of America money. Was being set up so to do the package and also do the electronic banking. Okay, that was the intent of the package, to be able to sell that. I believe I told you the story about going to Chicago and the big accounting firms. They aren't in charge of telling the outer offices what to buy, what not to buy. All of them are set up as partnerships. So selling to the home company up in Chicago doesn't get yourself software sold to all the offices. You have to go to every office. That part I got out of it. And but what I've done since then, I had a need with. I ran a thing called a maquiladora. Okay, that's a shelter company in Mexico. You bring your product in, and I take care of all your stuff, your administration, your customs, your duties, all that stuff. But I'm going to charge you a cost for the hours of labor. So I had to track labor very closely, how much time each person was putting on that company's product. So I wrote, in this case in Windows, what amounted to a credit card, a time card program. You put the time in, and it would calculate the total number of hours and reports for each of the companies that we were sheltering at the time. That was my last really hard push at doing software. And that was back almost 20 years ago to say it, but I'm in the world of, at this point, international manufacturing, and I still have my desk, a laptop. I use it to beat the heck out of it every day. I've done a whole MRP system in Excel, that kind of thing. I need to know capacity loading. I need to know population. I need to know all these other kinds of things, and cross-writing in databases. And some of my functions are that long doing the job, but that's the kind of programming I do right now when I need it. So that's what's going to drive me along. If I need it, I make it. Pretty straightforward.
Awesome. Do I pronounce your last name Falkenhan?
Falkenhan did very well.
All right.
It's very simple. It's 3 pieces, Falkenhan.
All right.
And by the way, it came from Germany like that. When the ship, the Adelaide, came out of Germany in 1883, landed in Baltimore. Baltimore was a port of entry. It was spelled correctly like that, and it's held water ever since. And it's real simple to spell. That's the neat part. It sounds terrible if Cubans say it, but it has something to do with falcons, the bird. Beyond that, I'm not sure.
Thank you so much, Jerry. This was excellent. I appreciate your time tonight.
I've enjoyed it. It's been tremendous. I do appreciate bringing all this back to the surf. It was a great time.
If you enjoyed these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.